Let's begin Learning Module 2 slideshow. Review the contents of Learning Module 2, Religious Experience. Religious experiences, REs, seem to the person having them to be of some objective reality and to have religious significance. When, if ever, are such experiences genuine, and what, if anything, do these tell us? Often such experiences explain or justify a person's religious beliefs and practices, since they appear to be contact with the divine. In this section, we will focus on what REs are supposed to be, what REs are evidence for, and what significance REs have. The specific learning objectives for this slideshow are answers to these questions. What are religious experiences? What are some examples of religious experiences? What do religious experiences mean to experiencers and the rest of us? What are some objections to the alleged divine origins of religious experiences? How do people sympathetic to the possibility of religious experiences being divine in origin respond to criticisms? So, what are religious experiences? Here's William James. Whether my treatment of mystical states will shed more light or darkness, I do not know, for my own constitution shuts me out from their enjoyment almost entirely, and I can speak of them only at second hand. But though forced to look upon the subject so externally, I will be as objective and receptive as I can, and I think I shall at least succeed in convincing you of the reality of the states in question, and of the paramount importance of their function. A religious experience is any alleged extraordinary contact with the divine or transcendent, that is, some sort of ultimate, non-ordinary reality. William James describes 4 different kinds of religious experience had by experiencers. There's the numinous. It is awe-inspiring, a feeling of divine presence. The ecstatic. People swoon or enter a trance or think the soul or their spirit leaves their body. The enthusiastic. The believer is possessed by the power of the divine. The mystical. Believer encounters the transcendent or becomes one with an immanent, all-pervading and sustaining force, truth, the universe, gods, etc. William James finds 4 essential attributes of most, if not all, religious experiences. They are ineffable, almost beyond expression. Words fail us. The noetic. These are revelatory, insightful. The transient. These are temporary, outside of normal perception of space and time. And they're passive. They come unbidden. They grasp us. What William James refers to as mystical states are what modern scholars call a kind of religious experience, regardless of their origin. Mystical and religious can remain a bit vague here. I leave a specific definition to scholars of religion and psychologists. William James was the founding figure of the modern science of psychology. When James and others say these experiences are real, he is referring to the fact that some physical or psychological event occurs which a person perceives or conceives and then interprets as significant to some religious worldview. So such experiences are real, as in people have some sort of experience, but it is not clear that the experience is caused by something outside of them, or if it is caused by something within their own mind. By convention, we call these real, but this does not mean their content or any beliefs and interpretations of these experiences are actually about reality. They might be or they might not be. Philosophers want to know what religious experiences are, or could be, and what they might signify. We always have to distinguish what something is, or is supposed to be, from what provokes or causes it. Philosophers want to know what religious experiences are, or could be, and what they might signify. We always have to distinguish what something is, or is supposed to be, from what provokes or causes it. Upon witnessing the profoundly moving birth of a child, few of us would doubt its reality, and it would take extraordinary deception or delusion to believe that one has witnessed this and yet is mistaken. It just does not seem likely that what we experience is a fiction. Nevertheless, this possibility has to be considered. Could anything else cause this experience? Sometimes things that seem so real really are not real. People suffering from schizophrenia or dementia often see what is not there. Dreams, deceptions, illusions often appear profoundly genuine when they are vivid and life-altering. Two reasoning errors threaten when we consider the power of religious experiences on our perceptions. Here are two arguments. In each, the assumptions in red could be true, and yet the conclusions in blue could be false. Argument 1. Profoundly moving, life-changing experience X just seems so real, genuine, non-fictional. Therefore, experience X must be real, genuine, non-fictional. But this is how delusions, false beliefs, are made. Argument 2. Genuine seeming experiences such as P, Q, and R have been established as actually genuine, and experience X is just like those, so experience X must also be genuine. But this is how others and we ourselves deceive us. Does genuine seeming always make something genuine? Suppose X is, I see an incarnation of Vishnu, Jesus, or a deceased ancestor in the room, when I am alone and open to the possibility. At best, we can say that, well, if such experiences actually reveal truths, then they reveal truths. But we thought that already. But the if is a mighty big assumption. So maybe religious experiences reveal truths. In the case of the Buddha, enlightenment brought knowledge of the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path. Through meditation and the religious experience of enlightenment, the Buddha awakened to these truths. Here are the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, dukkha, exists, or life is suffering. Suffering arises from attachment to desires. Suffering ceases when attachment to desires ceases. Freedom from suffering is possible by following the Eightfold Path. For more on the details of these Buddhist principles, see Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, The Noble Eightfold Path. It is online and gives a nice overview of doctrine and practice. Read the preface and the first chapter, The Way to End Suffering. There is a link to it within the module for this section of the course. Lots of people believe that they or others have religiously significant experiences. Religious experiences compel many people to believe in divine beings, forces, or revelations. For example, transcendent wisdom, deities, spirits, or other sorts of divine messengers who visit us and reveal important truths. In August 2007, Pew Research Center poll found that 68% of Americans believe that angels and demons are active in the world. 20% say that they've had an encounter with an angel or a demon. My source here is the United States Religious Landscape Survey Pew Research conducts. Some details from the Religious Landscape Survey. The Landscape Survey confirms how important religion is to most Americans. A majority of adults, 56%, say religion is very important in their lives. And more than 8 in 10, 82%, say it is at least somewhat important. Only about 1 in 6 adults, 16%, say religion is not too or not at all important in their lives. The groups most likely to say religion is very important in their lives include members of historically black, 85%, and evangelical, 79% Protestant churches, as well as Jehovah's Witnesses, 86%, Mormons, 83%, and Muslims, 72%. Slightly more than half of Catholics and members of mainline Protestant churches say religion is very important in their lives. By contrast, only about a third of Jews, 31%, and Buddhists, 35%, say religion is very important in their lives. Religion is important even among a large segment of those who are unaffiliated with a particular religious group. More than 4 in 10 of the unaffiliated population, 41%, says religion is at least somewhat important in their lives. The unaffiliated population, who represents 16.1% of the total adult population, includes those who identify themselves as atheistic or agnostic. But roughly 3/4 of the unaffiliated group consists of people who describe their religion as nothing in particular. This latter group, in turn, is comprised of 2 distinct subgroups. Those who say religion is somewhat or very important in their lives can be thought of as the religious unaffiliated. Those who say religion is not too or not at all important in their lives can be categorized as the secular unaffiliated. These 2 subgroups, as well as atheists and agnostics, are examined separately throughout this landscape survey. See the first report of the U.S. Religious Landscape Survey for details on divisions within the unaffiliated population. While the landscape survey finds that religion is important to a sizable portion of the unaffiliated, it also finds that nearly 1 in 10, 8%, of those who are affiliated with one religious group or another, including 28% of Jews and 24% of Buddhists, say religion is not too or not at all important in their lives. According to the Pew Research study, what percent of the U.S. population is unaffiliated, and who are these people? So it's 16.1%, and these include atheists, they're about 1.6%, agnostics, these are 2.4%, and people who say nothing in particular, 12.1%. You can divide these into the secular, unaffiliated, and the religious, unaffiliated. Like other major groups, people who are unaffiliated with any particular religion, 16.1%, also exhibit remarkable internal diversity, although 1/4 of this group consists of those who describe themselves as either atheistic or agnostic. The majority of the unaffiliated is made up of people who simply describe their religion as nothing in particular. This group, in turn, is fairly evenly divided between the secular unaffiliated, that is, those who say that religion is not important in their lives, and the religious unaffiliated, that is, those who say that religion is either somewhat important or very important in their lives. Okay, people claim to have religious experiences. So let's say one has a religious experience if one thinks one does. Prophets, visionaries, martyrs, saints, and ordinary people claim to have moving experiences that profoundly affect their worldview. They claim sincerely to have had divine contact. They believe that the experience is not imagined or illusory. For example, an alleged experience of the divine is often cited as evidence of an actual divine presence. People hear God, see an angel, feel the Holy Spirit, taste the body and blood of Christ, bask in a lingering sweet smell of Krishna. So one argument goes like this. Numerous people say, believe they experience God. So God must exist, right? But we must ask, when, if ever, might this key assumption be false? If I really think I experience X, then I probably do experience X. X must be real. If this assumption is ever false, then I cannot believe it is always a good reason to believe an RE is divine in origin. What are some examples of religious experiences? Many famous accounts of experiencers are chronicled in sacred writings based on oral histories and legends. The Old Testament and the New Testament are filled with examples of this. In Genesis chapter 22, an angel stops Abraham from sacrificing his son Isaac. In Luke chapter 1, the angel Gabriel finds Mary and tells her that she will be the virgin mother of the Christ child. Muhammad received his first revelation from the angel Gabriel in the 600s. On December 9, 1531, Juan Diego saw allegedly an apparition of a young girl at the hill of Tepeyac near Mexico City, who asked that a church be built at that site in her honor. Juan Diego recognized the girl as the Virgin Mary. Diego told his story to the Spanish Archbishop of Mexico City, who then told him to ask the lady for a miraculous sign to prove her identity. The first sign was the Virgin healing Juan's uncle. The Virgin told Juan Diego to gather flowers from the top of Tepeyac Hill. Juan Diego found Castilian roses, not native to Mexico, on the normally barren hilltop. The Virgin arranged these in his peasant cloak. When Juan Diego opened his cloak before Bishop Zumarraga on December 12th, the flowers fell to the floor, and on the fabric was the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. There are more recent, well-known accounts of experiences had by significant Christian figures. Teresa of Avila describes her own ecstatic vision of an angel in the 1530s. At Lourdes, France, Bernadette Soubirous in the 1850s sees Mary, the mother of Jesus. Joseph Smith, founder of the Latter-day Saints, sees in 1820 God, Jesus, and is later visited by the prophet angel Moroni in 1823. Teresa of Avila encountered an angel in the 1530s. Here is Bernini's depiction of that in his sculpture, Ecstasy of St. Teresa. So here's Teresa of Avila on her vision. It pleased the Lord that I should sometimes see the following vision. I would see beside me on my left hand an angel in bodily form, a type of vision which I am not in the habit of seeing except very rarely. Though I often see representations of angels, my visions of them are of the type which I first mentioned. It pleased the Lord that I should see this angel in the following way. He was not tall but short and very beautiful, and his face was so aflame that he appeared to be one of the highest ranks of angels, who seemed to be all on fire. In his hands I saw a great golden spear, and at the iron tip there appeared to be a point of fire. This he plunged into my heart several times, so that it penetrated my entrails. When he pulled it out, I felt that he took them with it, and left me utterly consumed by the great love of God. The pain was so severe that it made me utter several moans. The sweetness caused by this intense pain is so extreme that one cannot possibly wish it to cease, nor is one's soul content with anything but God. This is not a physical but a spiritual pain, though the body has some share in it, even a considerable share. This is from her autobiography. In 1820, Joseph Smith sees God in Jesus. Here's what he says. After I had retired to the place where I had previously designed to go, having looked around me and finding myself alone, I kneeled down and began to offer up the desires of my heart to God. I saw a pillar of light exactly over my head, above the brightness of the sun, which descended gradually until it fell upon me. It no sooner appeared than I found myself delivered from the enemy which held me bound. When the light rested upon me, I saw two personages, whose brightness and glory defy all description, standing above me in the air. One of them spake unto me, calling me by name, and said, pointing to the other, This is my beloved Son, hear him. My object in going to inquire of the Lord was to know which of all the sects was right, that I might know which to join. No sooner, therefore, did I get possession of myself so as to be able to speak, than I asked the personages who stood above me in the light, which of all the sects was right. I was answered that I must join none of them, for they were all wrong. Here's more from Joseph Smith, circa 1823, when he's visited by the angel Moroni, who presents him with the golden plates. He called me by name and said unto me that he was a messenger sent from the presence of God to me, and his name was Moroni, that God had a work for me to do, and that my name should be had for good and evil among all nations, kindreds and tongues, or that it should be both good and evil spoken of among all people. He said there was a book deposited, written upon golden plates, giving an account of the former inhabitants of this continent, and the source from whence they sprang. He also said that the fullness of the everlasting gospel was contained in it, as delivered by the Savior to the ancient inhabitants. This is an extract from the history of Joseph Smith, the prophet, by himself. What do religious experiences mean to experiencers and the rest of us? Here's William James on the science of religion. What is common to religious experiences? They expose a problem and present a solution. Religious experiences attest to there being something wrong and reveal that we can be saved from this wrongness by connecting properly with the higher powers. The generic message of religious experiences is this: the present personal, social, political situation is corrupt and needs to be overhauled or overthrown. Only following God's laws can save us from ruin or damnation. Should we consider the testimony of religious experiences true? No. Many such revelations neutralize one another, leaving no fixed result because they support incompatible doctrines. People interpret religious experiences differently. James had this idea of an overbelief. An overbelief is a belief one accepts that requires more evidence than one presently has. In general, acts of overbelief get accepted on emotional need or faith rather than evidence. It contrasts with the less often debated concept, underbelief. Someone who fails to adopt a belief that they clearly have evidence for is underbelieving. These are James' terms, but these signify different sorts of belief people can have. Beliefs based solely on religious experiences are overbeliefs. An overbelief is a belief one accepts that requires more evidence than one presently has. Another example of an overbelief might be thinking that God wants us or our leaders to kill infidels or adulterers. But contrary interpretations of Scripture or religious experiences are good reasons to doubt that such beliefs are sufficiently justified for us to act on. Of course, an overbelief might be true, but we don't have enough evidence for it. James's point: adopting religious or scientific beliefs without evidence can even be rational, but not compelling to others. An underbelief is a belief one ought to have, but one does not. It is a belief for which there is sufficient evidence, only one does not accept it. An example of this might be the belief that global warming is real or caused by human activity. For scientists, there is overwhelming evidence for this, but for many Americans, the evidence is not enough or flawed. Can you think of some other examples of overbeliefs and underbeliefs with respect to religious experience? Even if fear, ignorance, and wishful thinking cause religion, we want to know what causes religious experiences and what they might mean. Such experiences raise lots of questions. Are religious experiences natural or supernatural in origin? It is possible that religious experiences are divine, sure, but it is also possible that they are not. How do we distinguish divine religious experiences from non-divine religious experiences? Who is reasonably justified in believing the accounts of those who allegedly experience the divine? When anyone reports an important event, we want to trust them, but we need verification, which we cannot do so easily with religious experiences. They are personal, subjective, and occur under uncontrolled circumstances. Is the subject of a religious experience justified in inferring from their psychological experience that an objective reality corresponds to it? Do religious experiences tell us anything true beyond giving us biographical facts? Some people believe sincerely that their religious experiences are actual contact with the divine and assert this, but why should we accept that these are genuine? C.D. Broad has an argument for mystical agreement for the truth of some religious experiences. Here it is. Number 1, there is an enormous unanimity among experiencers concerning the spiritual nature of reality. Number 2, when there is such unanimity among experiencers as to what they take themselves to be experiencing, it is reasonable to conclude that their experiences are veridical, that is, truthful or genuine, unless we have good reason to believe they are deluded. Number 3, veridical means truthful or genuine, not illusory or imagined. Number 4, there are no positive reasons for thinking that mystical experiences per se are delusions, false beliefs. 5, therefore, it's reasonable to believe that mystical experiences are veridical. Such religious experiences reveal the nature of reality and really do offer us strong justification for a transcendent reality. Broad thinks that what causes us to accept religious claims and scientific claims is comparable. We must remember that all of us have accepted the current common sense and scientific view of the material world on the authority of our parents, nurses, masters, and companions at a time when we had neither the power nor the inclination to criticize it. And most of us accept, without even understanding, the more recondite doctrines of contemporary physics, simply on the authority of those whom we have been taught to regard as experts. This is Broad in 1939 from his Arguments for the Existence of God article. But are these claims of each equally credible, similarly justifiable? There are two kinds of justification on offer here, strong and weak. The strong justification thesis says, all or most religious experiences, such as those had by mystics, prophets, saints, and other visionaries, are veridical, that is, true or genuine. The implication of the strong justification thesis, if it's true, it makes it rationally obligatory for everyone to believe in the conclusion of an argument based on a religious experience, for the claim that, say, Mary, the mother of Jesus, really was present when Bernadette had her visions of her at Lourdes. C.D. Broad and others think that such experiences provide strong evidence for God's existence. The weak justification thesis is different. It's this: all or most religious experiences, such as those had by mystics, prophets, saints, and other visionaries, ought to be believed only by those who have had these experiences themselves. The implication of the weak justification thesis is this: if it's true, it provides rational support for those who have had such experiences, and no one else. What's presumed by both the strong justification thesis and the weak justification thesis is this: that if a person has what seems to be an experience of X, unless there is some reason to believe otherwise, then that person is probably justified believing that X exists. What are some objections to the alleged divine origins of religious experiences? Here's Louis Pojman in his critique of the argument from religious experience given by C.D. Broad. One problem is that religious experience is typically private. You have the sense of God forgiving you or an angel speaking to you. But I, who am in the same room with you, neither hear nor see nor feel anything unusual. You are praying and suddenly feel transported by grace and sense the unity of all reality. I, who am sitting next to you, wonder at the strange expression on your face and ask you if something is wrong. Perhaps your brain is experiencing an altered chemical or electrical state. Louis Pojman has three main criticisms of Broad's strong justification thesis. Religious experiences are too variable to allow generalizations beyond personal experience. Think of the diversity of ways people describe the presence of God and gods in sacred writings. Accounts are more different than alike. The presence of the divine is felt, seen, heard in myriad forms. Number two, justification for belief in the divine or divine revelations on the basis of religious experiences presumes already that some or all of these experiencers are not mistaken. Granting that these accounts are veridical just assumes what must be proved, namely, that these experiences are true. But we know people are prone to deception by themselves and others, wishful thinking, and a spectrum of schizophrenic and other psychotic disorders. Number three, the veridicality, truthfulness of religious experiences cannot be checked like ordinary perceptual experiences and cannot be tested objectively. They are too subjective, too often unique. And these people are not available for psychological examination or cross-examination. We have no way to tell whether they are mistaken or even lying. Religious experiences are too variable to allow generalizations beyond the personal. Religious experiences are too different to permit anything reliable to be said about any divine presence. Also, their origins could be organic, no matter how profound or life-changing they are. Pojman, in the text, presents a list of religious experiences, ranging from sensing the divine within, immanence, to seeing the divine as absolutely other, transcendent, and also that of the profound nothingness felt by an atheist. So there's too much diversity for there to be any real unanimity. In Buddhism, religious experiences feature no divine beings. In Hinduism and Christianity, you get multiple divine beings as human and animal avatars. In Judaism and Islam, we have one divine being appearing in many forms: burning bushes, pillars of clouds and fire, loud voices, shining suns, storms, thrones, chariots, etc. This diversity of religious experiences makes generalizing and concluding impossible, since nothing, no single unambiguous message or distinct, uncontroversial revelation is common. Justification for belief on the basis of religious experience is circular. Believing in a specific religious experience requires belief that religious experiences actually happen. Experiencers feel sincerely that they have had divine contact, so their belief about the cause of their experience is confirmed. But others often do not think this is enough. Such confirmation is not, however, essential to the rationality of one's beliefs. One should ask, what hypothesis best explains such experiences, given what is more reasonable to believe? Multiple interpretations with numerous plausible secular organic explanations must be dismissed prematurely in order to accept that a religious experience is genuine. Shall we just assume that any or most experiencers are not wishful thinking, hallucinating, or delusional? Religious experiences happen within the framework of a worldview. Thus, justifying a religious belief by a religious experience will not rest on premises that are self-evident to everyone, nor are there neutral criteria for assessing evidence. This is Pojman's third point. The veridicality of religious experiences cannot be checked. There are no objective criteria for assessing the truthfulness of religious experiences. Suppose religious experiences are sometimes genuine. Still, experiencers and believers cannot escape these problems. A. Plausible alternative explanations exist. Psychosis, hallucinations, delusions, manipulations by others cause religious experiences too. Physical or organic processes can explain religious experiences. Suppose a drug or trauma or deranged mind produces a religious experience. We can't tell the difference between an undiagnosed psychotic and a genuine experiencer without an examination by a professional. These people are mostly inaccessible. People see and hear ghosts or voices when exposed to environmental toxins or hallucinogens, or enter altered states of consciousness, such as trances. Documented symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning include listlessness, depression, dementia, emotional disturbances, and hallucinations. We now know that phenomena associated with haunted houses, including strange visions and sounds, feelings of dread, illness, are caused by carbon monoxide poisoning. Schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders are more prevalent than one might think. Psychosis is a loss of contact with reality that usually includes false beliefs about what is taking place or who one is, delusions or false beliefs that are firmly held but contradict reality and what is commonly held as true. Seeing or hearing things that aren't there, hallucinations or false sensory perceptions. These are referred to as positive symptoms. Negative symptoms like loss of motivation and social withdrawal can also occur. Psychosis affects 3 out of every 100 people. Schizophrenia is a long-term mental disorder involving a breakdown in the relation between thought, emotion, and behavior, leading to faulty perception, inappropriate actions and feelings, social or occupational dysfunction, sometimes a withdrawal from reality and personal relationships into fantasy and delusion, and a sense of mental fragmentation. Worldwide prevalence estimates range between 0.5% and 1%. Schizophrenia affects more than 21 million people worldwide. Religious experiences and psychotic episodes both appear to involve hallucinations and delusions. Schizophrenics often express religious delusions. For example, they believe they are divine beings, gods are talking to them, they are possessed by demons, etc. In studies of patients with schizophrenia who had been previously admitted to a hospital, 24% had religious delusions. Environmental factors such as significant stress, intense emotional situations, and disturbing or uncomfortable experiences can cause psychosis and schizophrenia. Some researchers wonder whether schizophrenia leads an individual to become more religious, or if intense religiosity, which is often egocentric and grandiose, triggers schizophrenia. People with schizophrenia who suffer from religious delusions are more religious than those who do not suffer from these delusions. Patients sometimes refuse treatment based on religious beliefs. Thus, untreated people are more prone to such experiences. Here are journal references. So this is Pojman's third point. The veridicality of religious experiences cannot be checked. There are no objective criteria for assessing the truthfulness of religious experiences. Accidental or systemic sample bias occurs in collecting examples of religious experiences. For example, there is no controlling for the unconscious desire for validation or confirmation in gathering and analyzing religious experiences. This enables believers to reject unfavorable explanations or steadfastly claim that religious experiences had by historically significant people are genuine. In statistics, a biased sample is any sample in which members of the population are not equally likely to be chosen. So the sample is not representative. When there is little or no control for deliberate or unconscious data selection, non-random factors such as finding only positive or supporting data or discounting negative data will skew interpretations of data. For example, experiencers self-select or put themselves in groups voluntarily and associate with people of similar beliefs. They are typically believers already and have a shared history of explaining phenomena according to popular or accepted religious worldviews. Here's Pojman's third point. There are no objective criteria for assessing the truthfulness of religious experiences, and examples are seriously biased. There are too few cases and no quality control. Confirmation bias is the tendency to search for or interpret new information in a way that confirms one's preconceptions, and to avoid data and interpretations which contradict prior beliefs. This bias allows experiencers to count only positive evidence and discount counter evidence. For example, cherry picking is the act of pointing at individual cases that seem to confirm a particular position while ignoring a significant portion of related cases that may contradict that position. There is a related issue here. Why is God so mysterious when God could be much more apparent? Why not talk to millions all at once in their own languages? What could count as a publicly verifiable religious experience? A loud trumpet call at 8 a.m. tomorrow and heard by all where God speaks a clear message might work. Suppose God wants to make it clear that we shouldn't be killing each other for whatever reason, and in particular, not because God wills it. So there are some very difficult problems here. Number one has to believe in the divine and then also believe in divine visits, so that one can call any religious experience veridical. That an event such as a divine visit is possible is not a good enough reason to believe that any specific religious experience is actually a divine visit. It is possible that gods and angels visit us, sure, but it is also possible that they don't. That an event is logically possible is the weakest sort of evidence available. Being a possible lottery winner does not justify thinking that you are an actual or even probable lottery winner. Number two, since religious experiences can either coincide with reality or not, one has to just believe that some of them are probably real in order to accept them as evidence of the divine. But there are more reasons and more probable reasons to believe religious experiences are not genuine. Number three, religious experiences, being highly subjective, are not repeatable or not repeatable enough, so observing them under controlled conditions where we can test alternate explanations is not possible. Delusions are true to believers, hallucinations are real to perceivers, but this does not count as evidence for the veridicality of religious experiences. What about the weak justification thesis? The weak justification thesis was this, that all or most religious experiences, such as those had by mystics, prophets, saints, and other visionaries, ought to be believed only by those who have had these experiences themselves. What is presumed by both the strong justification thesis and the weak justification thesis is this, that if a person has what seems to be an experience of X, unless there is some reason to believe otherwise, then that person is probably justified believing that X. The problems of the weak justification thesis are really just extensions of the problems of the strong justification thesis. For all I know, when I have a profound religious experience, I might be hallucinating or deceived or experiencing an undiagnosed psychosis. Self-delusion and deception is possible. I myself cannot rule these possibilities out. I can't be sure. For example, when God tells me to sacrifice my son to test my faith, what is happening is that I think I hear God telling me to sacrifice my son to prove my faith. But if I hear such a thing, and only I hear it, I need to consider that I might be out of my mind, or that someone is messing with me. The more I manage to convince myself that actually God wills this, the more we should worry. This is Bertrand Russell's point. The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubts. How do people sympathetic to the possibility of religious experience being divine in origin respond to criticism? Here are some responses from William James and others. This is William James. Mystical states or religious experiences offer only hypotheses, mere possibilities. They hold no authority and no superiority because they are inscrutable. These special visits are unavailable for analysis. Experiencers think mystical states are authoritative, and their direct experience makes them invulnerable to criticism, refutation. But non-experiencers have no obligation to take the mystical states of others authoritatively. Mystical states demonstrate that possibly some mystical states are also causes of what one believes. Possibly non-mystical or rationalistic consciousness is not the only source of truth. Mystical states and religious experiences are special, unique events. Experiencers are justified, says James, but the rest of us are not. Having been indoctrinated, baptized, blessed, makes an experiencer a privileged subject of a uniquely divine experience whom we cannot cross-examine. Here's another response. God is mysterious, so evidence the rest of us can examine is impossible. We can't know God or understand God's ways, so experiencers can't possibly give evidence that scientists with their skepticism and inferior instruments want. Okay, so here's an objection to that response. Suppose God is a mystery. If God is a mystery, then we can't know God. If we can't know God, then religious experience as evidence of God, of God's presence, is meaningless. We can't know it. Therefore, if God is a mystery, then religious experience is meaningless. If event X is a mystery, then only God knows its import, or only God can explain it. So religious experiences are of little worth, since we can only guess at their import, regardless of their source. Thus, religious experiences presume too much. People assume such experiences are divine, and then assume that they actually tell us something important about reality. Background beliefs corrupt as much as inform experience. You have to believe already in order to see God, angels, or demons. Psychologist Dan Gilbert talks about how people can misattribute the products of their own minds to powerful external agents. Gilbert describes research finding that what we believe already when we have strange experiences biases us. Even if other explanations also count for what you see, you are likely to ascribe external or supernatural agency to the strange experiences. Our tendency to underestimate the power of random processes to create curious order leads us to seek explanations where none are needed. For example, God provides an explanation for experiences that are otherwise baffling and inexplicable, but you have to believe in God to believe that God explains anything. Scientists by profession are more skeptical and less inclined to see supernatural causes of phenomena when observable, physical, or even random forces can explain curious events. What would it take to accept a supernatural cause for an event? Answer: non-experiencers, scientists and non-scientists alike, seek evidence that shows not only that a divine experience is possible, but also shows that no random or natural sources of such experiences are likely to be the cause. This is extremely hard to do. So, scientists remain skeptical. Maybe God causes curious order, miracles, religious experiences, maybe not. We just can't say for sure either way. That's what Dan Gilbert says. Is God nothing more than an attempt to explain order and good fortune by those who do not understand the mathematics of chance, the principles of self-organizing systems, or the psychology of the human mind? Much of what we attribute to God could be the product of our own minds. We overlook this other plausible, not so unlikely explanation. Gilbert is not arguing that psychological evidence or science proves that there is no God, or that people do not have religious experiences, veridical or delusional. Still, people prefer religious experiences to be manifestations of the divine rather than human psychology. Alternate explanations that often get overlooked, downplayed, or dismissed. Misperception. Sometimes we mistakenly interpret real sense data. Hallucination, false perception, or delusion due to unclear circumstances, imagination, injury, neuropathy, psychosis, near-death, or out-of-body experiences after brain trauma. Brain trauma, diseases and disorders, tumors, temporal lobe epilepsy, dementia, Parkinson's, schizophrenia, mania, depression, confabulation, etc. Intoxication or poisoning, chemical or herbal, drugged, drunk, or high. Deception of oneself or by others. And we can't overlook fraud. Experiencers lie. Non-experiencers want to rule out these contenders before accepting divine intervention. Causes of religious experiences can be external or internal. Extraordinary experiences, religious or otherwise, can be externally caused or internally caused, real or imagined. Do extraterrestrials from other planets visit Earth, abduct, probe, or impregnate humans? Many people believe it, and some of these people are certain that they themselves have had these experiences. Aliens could be making contact with residents of Earth, but we don't just believe these people, however sincere or changed or important truth-speaking they are. We cannot be sure that such experiences are not delusional or misperceptions or hallucinations, or that the people suffer from brain trauma, diseases, or disorders. They could be the victims of a hoax. They could be liars. We could be their victims. Non-experiencers want to rule out other probable explanations of extraordinary events before accepting divine or extraterrestrial causes. This is the end of Learning Module 2 slideshow.